Tiffany Olson, and my entire career has been in healthcare. So I've been in diagnostics, which is about tell me what's wrong, also in therapeutics, fix what's wrong. But for the past 15 years, I've really specialized in theranostics. So that's the combination of the two, both the diagnostic pairing with the therapeutic to really bring precision healthcare to patients. So over my 40-plus year career, I've been president, CEO, and board member. And today, I wanted to share some of my thoughts on leadership. So if you want to go just to my title slide or the first slide. So since I was a very little girl, I always knew that I wanted to lead a business. So when my friends would come over to play Barbies, I wanted to play store. And of course, I wanted to be the store owner. So I've always kept that goal from when I was a very little girl. And I reached it by developing and growing my career really by studying leadership. So today, that's what I want to talk about, being an inspirational female leader, especially in uncertain times. So next slide. I want you all just to take a moment and remember back over the past 11 years, back to 2010. So do you remember what was going on and all of the things that have happened since? So do you feel that change has been accelerated and really gotten faster over the last couple of years? And that's because change isn't coming, it's here, and it's accelerating. So really with COVID, what we've seen is these rapid changes in our society and the workplace. And they really can be overwhelming to not only individuals, but to companies. And that's why inspirational leadership is so important, because people need help to make sense out of all of that chaos. So before we get into the specifics of leadership and looking at kind of individual style, I wanted to first take a look at the trends, because it's really important to understand some of the big macro trends and how they're impacting every single industry. So the first one is consumerism. So think about how you consumed goods and services pre-pandemic and how you do them now. So pre-pandemic, I actually did very little online shopping. And today, I am almost an exclusive online shopper. And not only do I expect delivery to my house, but when I go and pick up groceries, it's to my car. So there is much less personal touch. And what that means is that goods and services are more autonomous. And so having a trusted brand is so important, because people are less likely to go with unknown names in this kind of a situation. So trust of the source, trust in the brand, and the reputation that that company has, it's never been bigger. Next area is really women in the workplace. And unfortunately, nearly 3 million American women have left the labor force. And that's just over the past year. We really call it that corona-induced exodus. And, you know, when you look at it, why? Well, I think we're all aware of it. Daycare centers closed. Schools went remote. And overnight, we became teachers, sports coaches, tech experts, among other things. And that really reflects the added burden that a lot of women who are caregivers, either for children or extended families, face. So there was a survey that was done by the Lean In organization, and it stated that 1 in 4 women are now considering leaving the workplace or downshifting their careers. So before the pandemic, we consisted of 50% of the U.S. workforce. And when you think about that underlining importance to our economy and everything else, and now with this recent exodus and some of the changes, it is going to take us years to return to that percent. And so this is a trend that leaders really need to understand. Next in the technology innovation. So McKinsey did a recent survey of over 900 executives, and they asked, what has COVID significantly accelerated in our companies? And definitely the highest one was the digitization of their work. And that was accelerated by 3 to 4 years. And then when they asked about product innovation, they said it was by 7 years. So think about that. A 7-year acceleration of digital products and services. I mean, that is huge. And it's also estimated that 80% of customer interactions are going to be digital. So what do leaders need to do to prepare for this? So how do you lead through some of these trends and some of these changes? So let's examine the first trend just a little bit more closely. Can you go to the next slide, Ginger? So let's talk about consumerism. I think it's slide 3. So with consumerism, there has been a decline in the discretionary spending. So despite all this surge in e-commerce, there's actually a decline in that discretionary spending. And, you know, part of it is just loss due to income. People are more risk adverse. So a McKinsey analysis noted that personal disposable income is not expected to recover to the pre-crisis level until Q2 of 2024. There's also been adoption of digital use, and it's accelerated some of the existing trends. So especially in the area of entertainment. So think, for example, in just 2 months, Disney Plus achieved the same level of success to Netflix, and it took Netflix 7 years. So think about that when you think of how fast new competitors can come into market and new competitors can enter. So my area, healthcare, telemedicine, just really had a tremendous change, actually a 10 times increase in appointments and online presence in just 15 days. So the supply chain can't keep up with that. It was very difficult for businesses and healthcare to keep up with some of those trends. And then, of course, remote learning, widely accepted. But I must say, for those of us with children and training that requires hands-on learning, remote learning may be widely accepted, but not always widely appreciated. So how do all of these trends impact our teams? I mean, how can we help them through these? So one thing we do as leaders and that we can do is to be flexible. So if COVID has taught us anything, it's taught us about adaptability. Whether it's a shift in how we spend our money, how we watch TV, or how our children are learning. You know, we must continually understand how this impacts our business, the markets we're in, and also our employees. You want to go to the next slide, slide 4. So what are some of the workforce changes? Well, research, and including my own experience, has shown that everyone deals with COVID just a little bit differently. But as we discussed, women have been hit particularly hard and impacted. And as a leader of the new workforce, it's really important to make sure that you're looking for flexibility, because people want flexibility in locations and their hours. You know, the stressors here aren't limited to women or to parents, but we've seen this massive increase in caregiving responsibilities at home, and it really means that it jeopardizes the ability of some people to stay in the workforce. Also, I think this is very interesting. I know I certainly have felt it, and my friends, we talked about this, but according to a recent survey, 40% of mothers, and this is compared to 27% of fathers, have added 3 or more additional hours of caregiving to their day. So that's 15 more hours a week. And in that old model, pre-COVID, it really isn't sustainable. It's hard to sustain in this model. So again, that flexibility is so very important. But flexibility also comes with challenges for a company, like meeting customer service expectations. There are tax implications. There's office space issues and others. The other thing people are kind of looking at, or a recent trend, is kind of less hands-on management. So during COVID, people really learned how to get their work done in kind of this new world. Many stopped going to the office. They had less management oversight. And they're kind of going to expect this shift in managerial styles when people return. Also, A recent study showed that many groups estimate that over 20% of business travel may never return. And that's because we've learned new, very acceptable ways to conduct business during COVID, whether that be Zoom, email, calls, versus that face-to-face meeting. Now, nothing replaces face-to-face, but there are many times when non-face-to-face type meetings are very, very effective and get the job done. And also, of course, people expect a strict office cleaning protocol. So although this may be very obvious, what isn't so much obvious maybe is that there might be less shared amenities. How do you do an open work concept? Do you have a cafeteria? Is there a gym in the building? And what does that mean for those type of facilities? You know, so the reality as a leader is that we are all in this war for talent. You see it in every industry, every restaurant, in airlines with drivers. I was just on the road earlier today and I passed a sign for a landscaping company that was offering a $1,000 sign-on bonus. And that was for seasonal work. So we need to make sure that we're leading our teams and our companies through this and understanding what employees want. Next slide. So the final macro trend is about changes in technology, and it's impacting all of us. So that would be slide 5. There you go. Great, thank you. So this photo is a scene from the movie Hidden Figures. So hopefully many of you have seen this really incredible movie. What is it about? Brilliant women. Hello. We're all here already. So in this movie, NASA is struggling to use the very first IBM computer. And there were 3 very smart female mathematicians who cracked the code by really adapting their skills, and they became the first female computer programmers. So their ability to embrace this technology, redefine how their work got done, turned them into really American heroes because they were instrumental in NASA's efforts to launch John Glenn into orbit and, more importantly, get him home safely. So this really is just an example about that we have not, it's not the first time in our history that we've seen these interruptions due to technology changes. So in fact, when it comes to artificial intelligence, data shows that the use of AI in most sectors of business has grown by over 270% over the last 4 years. So we're going to see more touchless interactions. So robots, they're serving food and drinks and vacuuming my home and cutting my lawn. There's also the rise of the Internet of Things, or OIT, and in its simplest form, IoT, it's a network of physical objects that are embedded with software, sensors, technology, and they exist solely to connect and exchange data with devices and other systems over the Internet. So some examples, again, home appliances that tell you when you're out of milk, smart medication containers or drawers that open when it's time to take your medicine, helmets that sense whether you are in a bike helmet, that sense whether you're in a crash. And a real interesting set of data points is that in 2019, there were about 26 billion Internet of Things devices, but it's estimated that it's going to increase by 2025 to 75 billion. And biotechnology rates, that has really accelerated because the pandemic and the urgency in which we can tackle global health issues really showed us some of the ways we can solve these problems in the future. So what does this mean for leaders today? So it's about understanding how all of these changes may impact your teams. And it's really the key of leading through these changes. So can you successfully connect these dots and then inspire the changes that are needed? Next slide. So what happens to businesses when all of these changes occur and they impact the market? because companies then need to change. And they have to go through these business transformations to survive. And this is where leaders really must calm the chaos and the confusion. So in response to these trends, we're seeing changes in business operating models. So becoming more agile, reducing costs, using technology in a new way and in better ways. Expanding into new markets like the Disney Plus model that I mentioned. So this is where that speed becomes very, very important. It's about leveraging technology for whether it be customer insights or even work from home options. And we've seen jobs eliminated due to technology. And of course, talent to do the work. How do you attract, how do you retain employees when there's a fight for talent? So everyone is trying to find this stability through all of this chaos. And companies need leaders who are truly capable of calming this. So how do you do it? Next slide. So the first thing is you really need to understand the difference between being a leader and being a manager. I'm just going to, there's the slide. Great. So this quote on the slide is from John Cotter, and it comes to mind when you think about managing versus leading. So good management brings a degree of order, consistency to key directions like quality, profitability, where leadership is about coping with change. So leadership, coping with change. So managers follow the direction, they analyze the data, where the leader inspires the change, grabs not only the minds but the hearts, and sells their vision to others. So to better demonstrate, let me just give you an example. Example 1. So Jane leads a team of physicians. They're getting acquired. So she implements a step-by-step project plan, making sure that everyone understands how their jobs are changing as a result of this acquisition, and she reports on the progress. So is she managing or leading? Well, she's managing. And that's because her physicians know how their jobs are changing and the path to march on. But they don't understand why and what the vision in the future is. So once they walk on that path, where are they going? What's their new purpose? How will their lives change? And very importantly, how will their patients' lives change? So managers are executors. They oversee the work, achieve goals set by the leader, and analyze results. So my next example. So Sue, she's a specialist at a company, and she's not in charge of the department, but she sees an opportunity for restructuring, for greater efficiency, better customer experience. She builds a business case. She has a vision for the future. She presents it to the head of the department. So is Sue demonstrating being a manager or a leader? So she is truly leading because the leaders are the visionaries. They demonstrate behaviors like inspiring change, envisioning the possibilities, selling their vision, and then gaining alignment. So both sets of skills are important. And the strongest leaders are those who can toggle between being a manager and being a leader and adapt and leverage these depending on the situation that they're in. So they're just as proficient in galvanizing the workforce as they are in executing on their vision. And these are the type of leaders that we have to have in uncertain times. So these are the type of leaders that we really need now. So what does it take to lead in today's environment? So when I think about my career, and there are several key skills I've worked to develop to really become the type of leader who can inspire and mobilize people. Next slide, Ginger. So my leadership philosophy can really be summed up in 3 words. Listen, learn, lead. So first, you really have to be an active listener. So that's employees at every level, peers, industry experts, hear what's in the quiet and make sure you know what's going on in the organization, where those choke points are. And you really have to be willing to meet employees where they are, emotionally and physically, and how you can collectively improve. And that takes a lot of trust. And it takes a lot of humility to hear some of the things too. So the next one is what I call learn to get dusty. So this is more than just walking in someone else's shoes. It's about walking behind them in their dust and learning from them, and really being willing to get yourself dirty by learning from others. So learn what the organization and the employees are trying to tell you, and then have a vision. Take what you've heard, what you've learned through that dusty experience, take the data points, and explain how they all come together, what the future holds, why it's going to be better, what does it mean for them. And then very, very importantly, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you must lead out loud. You have to calm the chaos. If you don't tell people about where your business is going, they're not going to know. And they will fill the void, or other people will fill that void, and it's usually with negative things. And of course, the rule of 7 for anybody in marketing, and the analysis says that people need to hear messages at least 7 times before taking action. So be prepared to tell your vision over and over again, out loud to different groups in different ways, whether that's writing, videos, live, podcasts, etc. Next slide. So successful leaders of the future really know how to understand these global trends, whether it be consumerism, workforce changes, technology, and with speed really pick the right business transformation so that the company can stay successful. So it's about accelerating the acceptance of these changes by knowing the difference between whether you're managing or leading. You need to do both, but make sure you're leading. Because you will always find managers, but it's that very special few who really know how to truly lead. So my philosophy, listen, learn, lead, often and out loud. Because as leaders, we don't always have the answers, but incorporating ideas and information from your team, it will create the best solution, which always will lead to the best outcome. Now I'll just pause and turn it back to Ginger.
Well, thank you so much for that presentation. Yes, we've received a lot of questions that have come in through the chat, so I'm trying to combine some of those together. So our first question from the audience comes from Anna Maria, and Anna Maria asks, how does one balance cohesiveness of team with wishes for team members that work from home? So I guess the question is work from home and cohesiveness of team.
So I would say, and I might be reading into some of this, so if you have a team where some work from home and some maybe don't, or I'll answer it first with all work from home, I think you have to find that time to connect, whether it be at the beginning of maybe a Zoom call or at the end of the Zoom call, where maybe it's just going around about everybody answering like one question, what are you binge watching today? Something that causes people to understand each other just on a little bit different level. And then, of course, making sure in order to be a team, people have to be moving toward the same goal. So understanding that goal, understanding where the milestones are, and celebrating whatever it looks like. So I usually will send a little, or I was doing during COVID, a little celebration package to people's homes, and we would open it together on Zoom. So people weren't supposed to open it together. And they were very small little things, but it was something just kind of special and fun to do. I would say if you have a team where some of them are in the office and some at home, I think you have to analyze which jobs require what type of flexibility, and just make sure that if the group in the office is all together and you're doing a Zoom call, that somehow those people who are working remotely can still feel part of that meeting. I think that's going to be the real, hard challenge in the future.
Oh, that's wonderful. So our next question comes from Evelyn, and Evelyn says, I work in a production/factory environment. Any advice for working in a production environment where employees are not able to work from home? How do you keep up morale and still meet the demands of production?
Yeah, so I actually have had that situation both with production employees and people that we have had working remotely. And I think one of the things is being very conscious of what you're saying. So it's not return to work, it's return to an office environment. I think it's also making sure that people that are working in a factory, that when you can do things that get people together to recognize people's work, to recognize milestones, it's extremely important. I know in our manufacturing facilities and in our pharmacies, we have a daily stand-up, a daily huddle. It's about 5 minutes long, but it enables people to kind of come together, still socially distanced, which in some of our locations is difficult because they're physically smaller in space. But I think those types of things help. We have some lunchrooms that are open, which also can bring some people together. We still require masks. We were off masks for a while. Now we're back on, still being socially distanced. But at least I think some way to bring people together and celebrate the milestones, remind people of why it's important that they're there, what their work does. And for us in healthcare, it always goes back then to the patient and reminding people, bringing the patient in, bring your customer in, whoever that customer is extremely important. I think very motivating for people.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I think we have one last question, and then we'll ask you for final thoughts. So this question comes from Sara, and Sara says, do you have any recommendations on how to be more confident when you don't always feel that way?
Yes, I do. So for me, it's a couple of things. One, it's making sure I'm prepared. Two, it's remembering that no one knows what I'm going to say but me before I say it. So if I have in my mind, like even with this presentation, I had a couple of things that I wanted to say that I didn't get to, but no one knows that. I shouldn't beat myself up about that. I think I got my points off. And three, have a little mantra to yourself. Have a little, if you're going to give a presentation or you're going into a meeting where you feel a little anxious, just have a mantra before you walk in. You're going to love what I'm going to say. What I say is important. I'm prepared. Whatever it is, just say it in your mind a couple of times before you go into the meeting. Take a deep breath, and you're going to do great.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, so I think that's all the time we have as we move on to the next presentation. Thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom for our listeners today?
So I would just say I wish you all success as you lead from wherever you are in your organization. Remember, you are powerful, smart women. You can make amazing changes in your organization. Just remember to lead out loud. Let people know your vision.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.